"Don't just sit there staring at it," Evelyn Wexler said, her smile razor-thin as she shoved the plate closer. "Men from your kind of background usually eat whatever they're given." The rotten smell hit Dr. Alton Reed before the silver stopped rattling against the china. Mold clung to the garnish. The meat had gone gray at the edges. Across the table, Bennett Wexler laughed into his whiskey. "Careful, Mom," he said loud enough for the donors nearby to hear. "Give a black man one invitation to a real gala, and he starts thinking he belongs in rooms built by better families." Alton didn't flinch. He just looked at the spoiled food, then at the people laughing. None of them understood they were humiliating the one man keeping their $2 billion future alive. Before continuing, comment where in the world you are watching from and make sure to subscribe, because tomorrow's story is one you can't miss. The chandeliers of the Vale Crown Hotel ballroom caught every diamond, every sneer, and every calculated glance. Dr. Alton Reed adjusted his perfectly tailored jacket as he crossed the marble floor, aware of the eyes following his movement. Behind him, Naomi Price and Victor Hale maintained a protective formation, their presence both professional and reassuring. The room dripped with old money and new desperation. Grant Wexler's waterfront project was bleeding cash, and everyone knew it. $2 billion worth of rescue funding hung in the balance, with Alton's signature the only thing standing between the Wexlers and financial embarrassment. "Dr. Reed!" Evelyn Wexler's voice carried across the room like expensive perfume, pleasant on the surface but cloying underneath. She glided toward him in a designer gown that probably cost more than most people's cars. "We're simply delighted you could join us." Her smile never reached her eyes. Alton had seen that look before, the careful arrangement of features that suggested warmth while conveying something entirely different. "Mrs. Wexler," he replied with measured courtesy. "Thank you for the invitation. Mother simply wouldn't stop talking about having you here." Bennett Wexler chimed in, appearing at his mother's elbow with a crystal tumbler in hand. His smile was loose with scotch and entitlement. "It's not every day we have someone of your background at one of these affairs." Naomi tensed beside Alton. Victor's hand tightened imperceptibly on his leather portfolio. "How fascinating that you've done so well for yourself," Evelyn added, touching Alton's arm with manicured fingers. "It really shows what's possible in America today, doesn't it?" The surrounding conversations quieted just enough to make her words carry. Alton maintained his composure, decades of boardroom battles evident in his steady gaze. "Success tends to follow careful preparation and strategic thinking, Mrs. Wexler. Something, I'm sure, your family understands." The gentle reminder of his power in this situation landed like a silk-wrapped brick. Evelyn's smile tightened for just a moment before she recovered. As they moved to their assigned tables, Alton noted how the other guests watched him, some with calculation, others with barely disguised disdain. A server approached with champagne, somehow managing to skip Alton twice while serving everyone around him. "Quite an oversight," Victor murmured, his legal mind already documenting every slight. The dinner service began with elaborate efficiency, but Alton's place setting remained conspicuously empty. Around him, conversation flowed with practiced ease, punctuated by the occasional glance in his direction. "Oh dear," Evelyn's voice cut through the murmur. "It seems there's been some confusion with your service, Dr. Reed. Allow me to handle this personally." She disappeared toward the kitchen, returning moments later with a covered plate. The theatrical nature of her gesture drew attention from nearby tables. She placed the plate before him with flourish, like a queen bestowing a favor on a commoner. "I selected this specially," she said, loud enough to be heard by surrounding guests. "I do hope it meets your standards." The moment Alton lifted his fork, the smell hit him, a sickening wave of decay beneath the garnish. The meat was clearly spoiled, the vegetables spotted with mold. It wasn't a mistake. The deliberate nature of the insult was clear in every carefully arranged element of the rotting dish. Bennett Wexler's laugh cut through the silence first, sharp, cruel, and knowing. "Perhaps it's a bit too sophisticated for some palates," he snickered. "Oh, dear," Evelyn said with exaggerated concern, her voice dripping with false sweetness. "I thought you people preferred stronger flavors than we do. Isn't that right, Bennett?" Laughter rippled through the surrounding tables, soft, measured, deadly. The kind of laughter that had echoed through country clubs and boardrooms for generations, marking boundaries and maintaining hierarchies. Naomi's face was a mask of controlled fury. Victor had already slipped his phone from his pocket, documenting everything with silent efficiency. The weight of the moment pressed down like a physical force. Here was the old money of Atlanta, laughing at a calculated humiliation, secure in their belief that power would always protect them from consequences. Alton slowly set down his fork. With deliberate care, he dabbed his mouth with the crisp linen napkin. Every movement was measured, controlled, carrying the weight of countless similar moments survived and overcome. He rose from his chair, his height and presence suddenly dominating the space. The laughter died as he surveyed the room, his gaze moving from face to face, marking each participant in this carefully orchestrated degradation. When he spoke, his voice was winter itself, cold, clear, and promising consequences. "I've spent too many years building what you people only inherit to let you mistake composure for dependence." The words landed like ice in the suddenly silent room. Without another glance at his plate, at Evelyn's fixed smile, or at Bennett's faltering smirk, Alton turned and walked toward the ballroom doors. His footsteps echoed on the marble floor, marking a rhythm that seemed to promise something more than just a departure. The night air hung thick with humidity, as Alton stood beneath the Vale Crown Hotel's grand portico. Valet lights flashed across polished luxury cars, and a cluster of society reporters lingered near the entrance, their cameras ready for any drama worth reporting. "Dr. Reed!" Naomi's voice cut through the evening noise as she burst through the heavy doors, Victor close behind her. Her usual composed demeanor showed cracks of concern. "What do you need from us?" Alton straightened his tie, his movements deliberate and calm. The lingering sting of humiliation had already transformed into cold purpose. "Naomi, manage the press. No comments, no reactions. Direct all inquiries to our corporate communications office." She nodded sharply and moved to intercept a reporter who had perked up at their exit. "Victor," Alton turned to his legal advisor, "call Sarah Chen at the board and get Marcus from General Counsel on the line. Conference them both in 5 minutes." Victor pulled out his phone immediately, stepping aside to make the calls. Alton withdrew his own phone, its screen reflecting the harsh valet lights. His fingers moved with precision as he dialed a number he rarely used, the direct line to Reed Meridian's emergency response team. "This is Dr. Reed. Authorization code 749 Alpha. His voice was steady, each word measured. "Initiate Protocol Black on Wexler Harbor. Full termination, effective immediately. Prepare the standard statement for integrity breach and value misalignment. Release in exactly 12 minutes. A burst of activity erupted behind him as the hotel's grand doors flew open. Grant Wexler charged out, his face flushed with either whiskey or rage, possibly both. Evelyn and Bennett trailed in his wake, their earlier smugness replaced by growing alarm. "Reed!" Grant's voice boomed across the portico. "What the hell do you think you're doing out here? Get back inside!" Alton didn't turn around. "Freeze all cooperative review processes," he continued into the phone. "Lock down every shared server access point. 12 minutes. Don't you dare ignore me!" Grant closed the distance, his expensive shoes clicking against the marble. You're about to make a very serious mistake. Alton ended his call and finally faced the Wexler family. Grant's tailored suit couldn't hide his agitation, while Evelyn maintained her practiced smile despite the tension around her eyes. Bennett swayed slightly, drunk enough to look dangerous. "Dr. Reed!" Evelyn stepped forward, her voice honey-sweet with false concern. "There seems to have been a terrible misunderstanding with dinner. Perhaps we could—" "The only misunderstanding," Alton cut in, his tone glacial, "was yours in believing that money buys immunity from consequences." Grant's face darkened. "Listen to me very carefully. If you're planning what I think you're planning, I will bury you in so much bad press." "Save your threats for people who fear them," Alton replied. He checked his watch. 7 minutes! "You arrogant!" Bennett lurched forward, but Victor stepped between them, his legal portfolio held like a shield. More guests had begun filtering out onto the portico, drawn by the commotion. Phones appeared in hands, recording the confrontation. The reporters edged closer, scenting blood in the water. 5 minutes, Alton announced quietly. "This is about dinner?" Grant's voice rose. "You're willing to torch a $2 billion deal over a plate of food?" "No, Mr. Wexler. This is about showing you exactly what happens when you mistake patience for weakness." Evelyn's mask slipped for just a moment, revealing something ugly underneath. "We made you, Dr. Reed. One word from us to the right people." 3 minutes, Alton interrupted. "You might want to prepare your investors for what's coming." The first alert hit someone's phone inside the ballroom. Then another, and another. The murmur of confusion grew into a wave of urgent conversation. Guests poured out onto the portico, many already on their phones, faces illuminated by screens delivering the news. "No," Grant whispered, grabbing his own phone. His face went pale as he read the official statement from Reed Meridian Holdings. Bennett shoved past Victor, jabbing a finger at Alton's chest. "You can't do this! Do you know who we are? Who do you think you—" The camera flashes caught Bennett's rage in stark detail. Tomorrow's society pages would show exactly who the Wexlers were, their public mask finally slipping. "Get him away from me!" Grant hissed, trying to pull his son back as more photographers captured the meltdown. Evelyn stood frozen, her carefully curated image crumbling as Atlanta's elite witnessed her family's humiliation. All around them, the power players who had laughed at dinner were now backing away, creating physical distance that mirrored the social chasm opening beneath the Wexlers' feet. Alton's car pulled up to the portico, sleek and black. He nodded to Naomi and Victor, who fell into step beside him. As they approached the vehicle, the valet opened the door with careful deference. "Dr. Reed!" Grant's final shout carried a note of desperation. "This isn't over!" Alton paused, one hand on the car door. He didn't turn around, didn't raise his voice, but his words carried clearly through the humid night air. "Yes, Mr. Wexler. It is." He slid into the leather interior, Naomi and Victor joining him in practiced synchronization. Through the tinted windows, he watched the Wexlers standing abandoned on their own red carpet, surrounded by the wreckage of their carefully constructed world. The very crowd they had played to earlier now turned away, embarrassed to be associated with such a public fall from grace. The sleek black car glided through Atlanta's glittering downtown, leaving the chaos of the Vale Crown Hotel behind. In the front passenger seat, Naomi's fingers flew across her tablet screen while she conducted 3 separate damage control conversations through her earpiece. Victor sat beside Alton in the back, methodically reviewing legal documents on his laptop, the blue glow illuminating his furrowed brow. "Reuters is already running with it," Naomi reported, muting her mic for a moment. "Bloomberg, too. The initial coverage is focusing on the deal collapse, but social media is picking up chatter about some kind of confrontation at the gala." Alton gazed out the window, his reflection calm against the passing city lights. Let them run whatever narrative they want for now. The truth will emerge soon enough. Grant's PR team is pushing hard, Naomi continued, scanning incoming alerts. They're floating terms like emotional decision and unprofessional conduct. The business press is splitting between portraying this as either a calculated power move or, she hesitated, or an angry black man overreacting. Alton finished, his voice carrying no trace of anger. Let them. The Wexlers just showed their true colors in front of half of Atlanta's power structure. Victor looked up from his laptop. We need to prepare for immediate retaliation. Grant won't wait until morning to start hitting back. He'll activate every connection he has, banking relationships, regulatory contacts, political allies. The mayor's office is already requesting an emergency meeting, Naomi confirmed, responding to another message. And 3 board members have called asking for clarification on the termination timeline. The car turned onto the tree-lined street leading to Alton's Buckhead home. Security lights illuminated the elegant modern architecture, and another vehicle was already parked in the circular drive. A dark blue Mercedes he recognized immediately. You called Denise, Alton said to Naomi. She nodded. As soon as we left the hotel. I thought you might need your sister's perspective tonight. The car came to a stop, and Alton's older sister was already emerging from her vehicle. Even at this late hour, Denise Reed carried herself with the commanding presence that had made her formidable on the bench. She wore a simple black pantsuit, her silver hair pulled back severely, studying her brother's face as he approached. Inside, she said simply. All of you. They gathered in Alton's home office, a warmly lit space lined with African art and engineering awards. Denise took the leather armchair while Naomi and Victor settled onto the sofa with their devices. Alton remained standing, looking out through floor-to-ceiling windows at the Atlanta skyline. Tell me exactly what happened, Denise instructed. Every detail. Alton recounted the evening precisely. The subtle slights, the skipped service, Evelyn's performative politeness, and finally the deliberately spoiled food. His voice remained steady, but his sister's expression darkened with each new detail. And you're certain the food was intentionally spoiled? She pressed. The smell was unmistakable, Alton confirmed. And Bennett's immediate laughter made it clear this was planned entertainment. Denise leaned forward, her judicial intensity focused on a different angle. You said Evelyn brought the plate herself? What was her exact reaction when your name was announced at the gala? She smiled, Alton recalled. But there was something else, a flash of recognition, almost fear, when the host said, Doctor. Reed. That tracks with something strange, Naomi interjected, pulling up files on her tablet. I've been reviewing background materials on the waterfront project, including historical parcel maps. There's a pattern I noticed before the gala, but hadn't fully pieced together. She connected her tablet to the room's display screen, projecting a series of overlaid property maps. The Wexler Harbor development site wasn't always empty land. In the 1970s, it was a thriving black community. But through a series of suspicious tax seizures and purchases through shell companies, dozens of families were forced out. Victor stood up, examining the maps more closely. These shell companies, they all trace back to holding groups connected to Grant's father and father-in-law. Keep going, Denise urged, her expression growing more troubled. Naomi zoomed in on one particular section of the old neighborhood. Most of the families displaced were working class, but there were some prominent black business owners too. And this parcel here, she highlighted a specific property. This belonged to the Reed family. The room fell silent. Alton moved closer to the screen, studying the property lines he'd never known existed. Not our immediate family, Denise explained quietly. But yes, our father's people. Cousins who lost everything when the urban renewal push came through. Dad spent years trying to prove the seizures were fraudulent, that the shell companies were just a scheme to steal land from black owners. Alton stared at his family name in the old property records, decades of history suddenly snapping into focus. The Wexler Harbor project wasn't just built on cleared land, it was built on stolen ground. His own family's stolen ground. "That's why Evelyn reacted to your name," Denise said. "The Reeds have been a threat to their empire before. They recognized who you were the moment you walked into that gala." Naomi pulled up more documents, revealing layer after layer of suspicious transactions. The whole development site is a graveyard of displaced families. The Wexlers didn't just inherit wealth. They inherited a cover-up. Near midnight, the study had transformed into a makeshift war room. Papers and folders covered every surface, creating a paper trail of buried injustice. Alton stood at his desk, while Denise sat in the leather chair, her fingers tracing yellowed document edges. Naomi worked efficiently at a side table, her laptop surrounded by stacks of records, while Victor paced, reading through legal briefs. "Dad knew something wasn't right," Denise said, lifting an old folder. "He spent years tracking these property transfers, trying to prove the whole urban renewal program was corrupt from the start." Alton picked up a faded newspaper clipping, showing their father standing with other community leaders. "I remember bits and pieces. Late-night conversations I wasn't supposed to hear. Men coming to the house looking worried. They were worried for good reason," Denise replied. "Every time Dad got close to proving the fraud, something would happen. Records would vanish, witnesses would back out, people would lose jobs or get eviction notices." Naomi looked up from her screen. "The pattern is clear once you know what to look for. These shell companies, Meridian Valley Holdings, Crown Point Development, Blue Ridge Associates, they all lead back to early Wexler business interests. The same law firms, the same notaries, the same deposit patterns. The timing was always suspicious," Denise continued. Code violations would suddenly appear on properties that had just passed inspection. Tax assessments would triple overnight. Then these mysterious development companies would swoop in with lowball offers, telling people to sell fast before they lost everything. Alton remembered more now. Hushed meetings in church basements, men afraid to sign witness statements, his father's growing frustration as evidence slipped away. How many families lost their homes? "Dozens," Denise said, spreading out an old map. The whole waterfront district was a thriving black community. Businesses, churches, generational homes, all gone within 5 years. Dad tried to fight it in court, but the judges always sided with the developers. Victor stopped pacing, studying a legal document. "These property transfers show the same structural fraud patterns we see in modern real estate schemes. But they were more blatant back then, probably because they assumed no one could fight back effectively." "Look at this," Naomi called out, turning her laptop screen. "I've mapped the old shell companies against current Wexler subsidiaries. The same legal architecture keeps appearing. They just updated the names. The original fraud created the template they're still using." Alton leaned over the desk, examining decades of systematic theft laid bare in documents and deeds. "So, when Evelyn Wexler saw my name tonight, she knew exactly who you were," Denise finished. "The Reeds were one of the families that fought back hardest. Dad kept pushing even after most people gave up. They probably thought that threat died with him. Instead, his son just became their $2 billion lifeline," Victor observed. "No wonder they panicked. Your name connected past to present at exactly the wrong moment for them." Naomi pulled up more records. "The waterfront project is already struggling. Without our investment, they'll face serious pressure from lenders. If evidence of the original fraud surfaces now, it would threaten everything," Victor said. "Not just the development, but the whole foundation of Wexler wealth. These land grabs created their initial capital base. Alton stood silent for a moment, processing the weight of history behind tonight's humiliation. The moldy food wasn't just racist cruelty. It was a desperate attempt to put him in his place before he could discover the truth about his father's fight. "This changes our approach," he said finally. "The canceled deal isn't just business anymore. It's about finishing what Dad started." Denise nodded gravely. "They'll fight harder knowing that. The Wexlers have had decades to bury evidence and build protection. Then we need to move fast," Alton decided. He turned to his team. "Naomi, secure every archive you can access. Get our IT department to preserve all communications and project documents. We need multiple backups at secure locations." "Already started," she replied, typing rapidly. "I'm pulling in our digital forensics team to create verified copies of everything. Victor, I want complete documentation of tonight's events. Witnesses, security footage, social media, everything. If they try to spin this as a simple misunderstanding, we need proof it was deliberate." "I'll have affidavits from hotel staff by morning," Victor assured him. "And I'm putting our crisis response team on standby." Alton turned to his sister. "Denise, can you get Dad's original case files? There might be details we need, connections we can't see yet." "I'll bring everything at first light," she promised. "Some of his old contacts might still be alive, too. People who were afraid to speak then might be ready now." The study fell quiet as they all absorbed the magnitude of what they were undertaking. This wasn't just corporate warfare anymore. It was a chance to expose decades of buried injustice. A sharp knock at the door interrupted their thoughts. Alton's security chief entered, holding a plain manila envelope. "This was just delivered to the gate, sir," he said. "It passed initial screening, but—" Alton opened the envelope carefully. Inside was a black-and-white photograph showing his father at a protest site decades ago. Across the bottom, someone had written in red ink, "He should have let it go." Dawn crept through the kitchen windows of Alton's Buckhead estate, casting long shadows across marble counters where empty coffee cups testified to a sleepless night. 3 TV screens mounted on the wall played different news channels, their closed captions scrolling beneath carefully crafted narratives about the previous evening's events. "Reed Meridian CEO's shocking departure from charity gala raises questions," read one headline. Another showed Grant Wexler's corporate headshot. "Development leader calls canceled partnership unfortunate overreaction." Alton stood watching, his suit jacket draped over a kitchen chair, tie loosened but still knotted. He'd been up all night reviewing documents with Victor and Naomi, who now sat at the kitchen island surrounded by laptops and legal pads. The security system chimed, and moments later Denise walked in carrying 2 heavy storage boxes. Her judicial composure couldn't quite hide her exhaustion. "Dad kept everything," she said, setting the boxes on the counter. "Even after the courts dismissed his cases, he never stopped collecting evidence." On the center screen, Evelyn Wexler appeared in a perfectly staged morning show interview. She sat perched on the edge of her chair, dressed in cream-colored cashmere, her eyes bright with practiced tears. "I personally tried to make things right when the kitchen made a mistake," she said, dabbing at her eyes with a monogrammed handkerchief. "We've always welcomed diversity at our events. To have such a simple misunderstanding twisted into something ugly, it breaks my heart." "Turn it off," Denise ordered, her voice sharp with disgust. Naomi muted the screens but left them running to monitor coverage. Victor looked up from his phone. "They're coordinating the message across all platforms. Grant's PR team is pushing unfortunate miscommunication while painting you as volatile and unprofessional. Bennett's doing worse," Naomi added, scrolling through social media feeds. "He's using burner accounts to share edited clips that make you look aggressive. The comment threads are getting ugly." Alton remained focused on the boxes Denise had brought. "Show me what Dad found." They cleared space on the kitchen island as Denise began unpacking folders, notebooks, and manila envelopes. The documents inside showed their age: yellowed papers, faded ink, old typewriter impressions. "These are the tax records," Denise explained, opening one folder. Dad tracked how properties were suddenly reassessed at 3 or 4 times their previous value. Most families couldn't afford the new payments. She spread out hand-drawn maps, marked with dates and notes. Then these shell companies would appear offering quick cash buyouts. People had to choose between selling low or losing everything. Victor picked up a stack of letters. Complaint filings, witness statements, meeting minutes from community organizations. Your father documented everything. "Look at this," Naomi said, examining a water-stained ledger book. Account numbers connecting the shell companies to wire transfers. Some of these routing numbers might still be traceable. Alton studied the careful notes in his father's handwriting, remembering the late nights when he'd seen him working at the kitchen table, phone pressed to his ear as he tracked down leads. "One name keeps appearing," Denise said, pointing to recurring signatures and memo lines. "Harlan Voss." "Evelyn's father," Alton confirmed. "He ran the family's real estate operations before Grant took over." Victor was already searching legal databases on his laptop. Harlan Voss served on the Urban Renewal Commission, chaired the zoning board, and partnered in multiple development corporations. He had influence in every office that would have touched these transactions. The security system chimed again as more team members arrived. Financial analysts, legal researchers, and communications staff filed in, carrying fresh documents and urgent updates. "The Wexlers are moving fast," Naomi reported, reviewing new messages. 3 regional banks with Wexler board connections are putting pressure on our subsidiary credit lines. They're trying to create a liquidity squeeze. Grant's calling other developers, Victor added, suggesting Reed Meridian is unstable and warning them away from joint ventures. On the TV screens, business commentators debated the previous night's events with carefully concerned expressions. Sources close to the situation question whether personal grievance is driving business decisions. Alton walked to the windows, watching the sun rise over the Atlanta skyline. The same skyline his father had watched transform through decades of development, knowing how many families had been erased from the landscape. He turned back to his team. "They're not just trying to discredit me professionally. Grant knows what we might find if we dig too deep. He needs to destroy our credibility before we can expose the truth. He's got the resources to do it," Victor warned. "The Wexlers have spent decades building protection around these secrets. But they've never faced someone with the power to fight back," Denise said. "Dad couldn't match their influence then. You can." Alton looked at the scattered evidence of his father's thwarted investigation, the careful documentation of systematic theft dressed up as progress. Then he looked at his own team, armed with modern tools and institutional strength his father never had. "We're not just defending ourselves against a smear campaign," he told them. "We're reopening a buried crime. And this time, we have the resources to finish what he started." The morning sun blazed through the wall of windows in Reed Meridian's executive boardroom, 40 stories above Atlanta's business district. Alton stood at the head of the polished conference table, his reflection fractured across water glasses and laptop screens. Board members shifted in their leather chairs, tension crackling through the air-conditioned silence. "The media narrative is spreading faster than expected," Naomi reported, gesturing to the presentation screen where headlines scrolled. "They're painting last night as an impulsive decision driven by personal feelings." Victor adjusted his reading glasses, scanning through legal briefs. "Grant Wexler's team has already drafted preliminary litigation threats. They're suggesting breach of good faith in the partnership discussions, which is exactly why we need to de-escalate this situation immediately," said James Morton, one of the older white board members. He leaned forward, fingers laced together. Dr. Reed, with all due respect, we can't let racial grievance derail a billion-dollar development opportunity. The room temperature seemed to drop 10 degrees. Alton turned slowly to face Morton, his expression perfectly controlled. "Interesting choice of words, James," he said quietly. "When they serve moldy food, it's hospitality. When I respond, it's racial grievance." Morton flushed, but pressed on. "That's not what I meant. I'm simply saying we should keep race out of it. Focus on the business case." "The business case," Alton repeated. "Tell me, which part of public humiliation makes good business sense? Should I have smiled and asked for seconds?" Samuel Raines cleared his throat, breaking the tension. "We have more immediate concerns. City inspectors showed up unannounced at 3 of our properties this morning. Building code reviews, safety audits, permit verifications, clearly coordinated. The banking situation is also deteriorating," Victor added. "Credit facilities that were routine yesterday are suddenly requiring additional review. Grant's influence runs deep." Alton nodded, absorbing the updates. He walked to the whiteboard and drew 4 columns. "We fight this on multiple tracks," he said, writing headers. "Corporate defense, historical investigation, witness outreach, media timing." He turned back to the room. "Victor, I want every document from the partnership talks preserved and indexed. Track every communication, every draft, every meeting minute. Samuel, stabilize our operations. Review all city compliance, strengthen security protocols, maintain business continuity." Samuel was already taking notes. "I'll have status reports from each division by end of day. Naomi, coordinate with Denise on the historical investigation. We need to map everyone who lost property during those urban renewal projects. Find survivors, collect statements, build the timeline." "Already started," Naomi replied. "Denise is reaching out to church leaders who worked with displaced families. And I may have a lead on the gala kitchen staff through a catering contact." Morton shifted uncomfortably. "Dr. Reed, perhaps we should discuss this strategic pivot with the full board before—" "This isn't a pivot, James," Alton cut in. "This is self-defense. The Wexlers didn't just insult me. They exposed their character, their methods, and their history. Now they're mobilizing every resource to bury the truth again." He gestured to the news headlines still scrolling across the screen. "Look how quickly the mayor aligned with them. Celia Voss is calling for calm and perspective while meeting privately with Grant. The same political machine that helped steal land 40 years ago is still protecting them today." The board members exchanged glances, reality sinking in. This wasn't just a social slight or a failed deal. They were facing coordinated institutional pressure. "Our priority is protecting Reed Meridian's interests," Alton continued. "But I won't pretend last night was an isolated incident. The Wexlers showed us who they are. Now we show them who we've become." The meeting continued through the afternoon. Samuel coordinated with division heads to fortify operations. Victor's legal team mapped potential pressure points and countermeasures. Naomi managed the flow of information, keeping everyone focused and efficient. By late afternoon, the immediate crisis response was taking shape. Security protocols were tightened. Media statements were crafted. Documentary evidence was secured. Through it all, Alton maintained his methodical calm, treating each challenge as a problem to be solved rather than a provocation to be answered. As dusk approached, the board members and executives filed out, leaving Alton alone in the boardroom. He stood at the windows, watching shadows lengthen across the city skyline. The same view would have looked very different 40 years ago, before urban renewal reshaped entire neighborhoods. Naomi appeared in the doorway. "Got a minute?" Alton turned. "Updates?" One of Evelyn's former household staff reached out through an intermediary. "She's willing to meet tonight, off the record." Says she has information about what happened at the gala. The old church annex sat on the fringe of what used to be the heart of Atlanta's black community. Its red brick walls held decades of memories, meetings, protests, and quiet acts of resistance. Now, as evening settled, those same walls witnessed another chapter unfolding. Loretta Vale perched on the edge of a worn wooden chair, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. Despite her obvious tension, she carried herself with the kind of dignity that comes from years of watching without being seen. Her gray-streaked hair was pulled back neatly, and her clothes, though simple, were precisely pressed. "I worked in that house for 23 years, she began, her voice soft but clear. "Mrs. Wexler likes everyone to think she's all manners and charity. But that's just the outside she shows people. Behind closed doors, she's different." Alton sat across from her, deliberately positioning himself to appear non-threatening. Denise took the chair beside him, while Naomi and Victor arranged themselves nearby, Victor with his legal pad ready. "Different how?" Alton asked gently. Loretta's fingers tightened around each other. "She plays games with people, uses the staff to do things she can deny later. Like having us accidentally spill drinks on guests she doesn't like, or making sure certain people get cold food or wrong orders. Then she acts all apologetic, but she's smiling inside." "And the night of the gala?" Denise prompted. "I was helping in the kitchen when she came in." She'd been checking the seating charts earlier. Loretta's eyes met Alton's directly. "When she saw your full name, Dr. Reed, something changed. She went real quiet, kind of pale. Then she got that look she gets when she's planning something." Victor's pen moved steadily across his pad. "What happened next?" "She insisted on handling one plate herself. Wouldn't let anyone else touch it." Loretta's voice wavered slightly. "I didn't see her do anything to the food directly, but I heard what she said afterward. She was standing by the service door, and she said clear as day, 'Let's see if he remembers where he comes from.'" Denise straightened in her chair. "That phrase, 'where he comes from,' it's almost exactly what Dad said they used to say during the land disputes. It was their way of putting people in their place." "There's more," Loretta continued. "Years back, I was cleaning in Mr. Harlan's old study. That's Mrs. Wexler's father. She was in there going through papers with Mr. Grant. I heard her say something about the Reed name being unfinished business from her daddy's time. She sounded worried." The room fell silent as the implications sank in. What had seemed like an isolated act of racism was revealing itself as something far more calculated. A deliberate attempt to intimidate someone whose family name carried threatening history. "Mrs. Vale," Victor said formally, "would you be willing to make a sworn statement about what you've told us?" Fear flickered across Loretta's face. "They'll know it was me." "We can protect you," Naomi assured her. "We have resources, security protocols." "No, you don't understand," Loretta interrupted. "The Wexlers, they don't just hurt you. They hurt everyone around you. Your family, your friends, anyone who helps you." Her hands trembled slightly. "I've seen it happen." Alton leaned forward. "Mrs. Vale, I give you my word. We won't let them touch you or anyone close to you. But what you've told us tonight is crucial. This wasn't just about a plate of food. They recognized my name and tried to send a message." Victor finished writing and looked up. "We can arrange immediate protection. Private security, temporary relocation if necessary, financial support to ensure your independence." Loretta studied each face in turn, measuring their resolve. Finally, she nodded. "I'll make a statement, but not here. Somewhere official, with everything documented proper." "We'll do it at our legal offices first thing tomorrow," Victor agreed. "Tonight, we'll have security escort you home and remain in place." "I never thought I'd speak up," Loretta said quietly. "All these years, watching them treat people like they were nothing. But seeing what they did to you at that gala, Dr. Reed, it was like watching history repeat itself. Same cruelty, just dressed up fancier. Denise reached over and squeezed the older woman's hand. You're helping us expose something that's been hidden too long. As the meeting concluded, Victor made arrangements for private security, while Naomi coordinated logistics for the next day's formal statement. Alton insisted on walking Loretta to her car personally. The evening air had cooled, carrying the scent of magnolia from the church's garden. As they crossed the small parking lot, Alton noticed a black SUV idling across the street, its windows tinted dark against the gathering dusk. Before he could focus on any details, it pulled away smoothly, disappearing into the night traffic. Morning sunlight cast long shadows across the waterfront district as Alton's car rolled slowly past chain-link fences and construction barriers. Half-finished luxury condos loomed over old brick buildings, their glass surfaces reflecting the demolished spaces where homes once stood. Denise sat in the front passenger seat, while Naomi worked in the back, documenting everything with her tablet. "Turn left here," Denise said, consulting one of their father's old maps. "Ruth Bell's house should be on the next block, assuming it's still standing." They found the house, a modest two-story craftsman that seemed to resist the surrounding demolition through sheer stubbornness. Its green paint was faded but intact, the small garden well tended despite the dust from nearby construction. Ruth Bell met them on her porch, a tall woman in her 70s, with sharp eyes and a straight spine. She wore a pressed floral dress and carried herself with the kind of dignity that came from decades of refusing to be erased. "I remember your daddy," she said as they settled into porch chairs. "James Reed. He'd come through here with his briefcase full of papers, telling everybody to make copies of everything." She shook her head. "Some folks thought he was being paranoid, until the letters started coming." "What kind of letters?" Alton asked. "First it was code violations. Little things, peeling paint, uneven steps, grass too tall. Then tax notices saying we owed money nobody could explain. Some people got letters saying their deeds had irregularities that needed reviewing." Ruth's voice hardened. "But the worst ones were the job threats." Denise leaned forward. "Can you tell us more about that?" "They were careful, never putting anything in writing themselves. But suddenly folks who worked at companies with Wexler contracts would get called in, told their positions were being restructured. Their children's scholarships would get reviewed. All very polite, very legal-sounding." Ruth's hands tightened in her lap. But everybody knew what it meant. Naomi looked up from her tablet. "Do you remember specific names? People who received these threats?" "Marcus Thompson. He was a foreman at one of their construction sites. Lost his job 3 days after speaking at a community meeting. Sarah Jenkins worked as an accountant for one of their partner firms. They transferred her so far away she had to quit. The Williams family had 3 generations in one house, until the tax reassessment forced them out." Alton studied the street while Ruth spoke. Beyond her well-kept yard, empty lots stretched toward the water. Construction equipment sat idle, waiting to continue the transformation. But if you looked carefully, you could still see traces. Old foundation stones, bits of walkway, a flowering bush planted decades ago, refusing to die. "Your father understood what they were doing," Ruth continued. "He knew they weren't just taking houses. They were breaking apart a community. That's why he kept telling us to save everything. Letters, photos, meeting minutes, church bulletins. They're counting on memory failing," he'd say. "Don't let them bury the truth." Denise reached into her bag and carefully withdrew one of their father's maps. "Mrs. Bell, does this look familiar?" Ruth put on her reading glasses and studied the detailed street grid. Her finger traced old property lines, stopping at familiar names. "Lord, yes. This is how it was before. See here? The Johnsons had that corner lot with the big oak tree. The Petersons ran their grocery store right there. And this, she pointed to a spot now covered by a half-built parking structure. This was where we held our summer festivals. The whole neighborhood would come out. While Ruth and Denise pored over the map, Naomi walked the perimeter of the property, photographing surviving landmarks and noting GPS coordinates. Alton stood at the porch railing, seeing the neighborhood through new eyes. His father hadn't been pursuing a simple lawsuit. He'd been building a historical record, documenting a systematic dismantling that was meant to vanish without trace. They offered money to some folks, Ruth said quietly. Not fair value, but enough to tempt people who were tired of fighting. Called it neighborhood improvement compensation. Those who took it had to sign papers saying they left voluntarily. No complaints, no legal claims, no talking to reporters. But you stayed, Alton observed. Ruth straightened in her chair. Houses 6 days a week to pay for it. I wasn't about to let them chase me out with fancy papers and fake violations. Naomi returned to the porch, her tablet full of photos and notes. Mrs. Bell, would you be willing to help us contact other former residents? We need to document as many stories as possible. Already got a list started, Ruth said. Been keeping track of where everybody's scattered to. Some are gone now, but their children remember. We all remember. They spent another hour on Ruth's porch, recording names and details. The morning heat built as construction crews began arriving at nearby sites, their machines growling to life. Back in the car, headed toward downtown, Naomi's phone buzzed with an encrypted message. She read it twice before speaking. It's from someone inside Wexler Core Development, a junior accountant. Says they have internal ledgers showing how the shell companies moved money during the original land acquisitions. She looked up. They're willing to share everything in exchange for protection. The afternoon sun blazed through the windows of Reed Meridian's executive floor as security teams swept the main conference room for surveillance devices. Alton watched the process with practiced patience, standing beside Victor, who clutched a sealed document pouch containing the whistleblower's files. "Room's clean," the lead security officer announced, nodding to Alton. "Lock it down," Alton ordered. "No interruptions, no exceptions." Inside, they gathered around the polished conference table. Alton, Victor, Naomi, Denise, and Samuel Raines. The air felt charged with possibility as Victor carefully emptied the contents of the pouch. Spreadsheets, internal memos, and financial records spread across the surface like pieces of a long-hidden puzzle. The accountant was thorough, Victor said, organizing the papers into categories. These go back 20 years. Look at this chain of shell companies. Each one existed just long enough to process property transfers before dissolving. Naomi pulled up digital copies on her tablet, cross-referencing dates. The pattern's consistent. They'd create a new entity, move assets through it, then close it down within months. Classic laundering structure. Samuel leaned forward, studying a particularly dense spreadsheet. The timing matches the tax seizures Ruth Bell mentioned. Every forced sale links to one of these shells. "Here's where it gets interesting," Victor said, laying out a series of bank transfers. Each shell company received funding from numbered accounts, but our whistleblower tracked the source. All roads lead back to early Wexler family holdings and Harlan Voss's personal accounts. Denise's eyes narrowed as she examined the documents. The same methods our father suspected, but could never prove. They buried the paper trail so deep, spread it across so many entities. "Look at these dates," Naomi pointed to a cluster of political donations. Major contributions to city council members, planning commissioners, tax assessors, all within days of crucial rezoning votes. "Not just donations," Samuel added. "Private school tuition for officials' children, country club memberships, consulting contracts for their spouses. They bought influence through 1,000 small favors. Alton studied the growing web of evidence. Victor, what's our strongest legal approach? Multiple angles, Victor replied, professional excitement evident in his voice. Civil claims for fraud and conspiracy. RICO implications if we can prove the pattern. These political payments could trigger federal investigation. Public corruption crosses state lines through their interstate holdings. Denise sorted through the witness statements she'd collected. I've got sworn affidavits from Ruth and 6 other original residents. Their stories align perfectly with these financial records. Names, dates, properties. It all connects. What about media strategy? Samuel asked. Naomi pulled up her contact list. I know a reporter at the Chronicle, Lauren Martinez. She's been investigating corporate corruption for years, built a solid reputation. More importantly, she's immune to pressure from advertisers. The City Council has a public hearing on waterfront development next week, Samuel noted. Perfect timing for this to break. Alton nodded slowly. Schedule the leak for 24 hours before the hearing. Give Martinez enough lead time to verify everything independently. We need this story bulletproof. The afternoon stretched into evening as they built their case. Every hour brought new connections, stronger evidence, mounting proof of decades of systematic theft and corruption. Updates filtered in from various sources. Major donors quietly canceling appearances with Grant. Financial analysts raising questions about the waterfront project's viability. You need to hear this, Naomi said, around 8 o'clock, playing an audio clip on her phone. Bennett Wexler's voice filled the room, clearly recorded at some private function. People like Reed think they can buy their way into our world. Give them a fancy degree, a nice suit, and suddenly they forget their place. Sometimes you need to remind them who really owns this city. Samuel shook his head in disgust. That's going to play well in the press. His father must be furious, Victor commented. Bennett's always been their weak link. He's their true face, Denise said firmly. The only difference is he says openly what they usually hide behind manners. Hour by hour, the momentum shifted. Victor's legal team found more whistleblowers willing to talk. Denise's community contacts brought forward additional witnesses. Even Samuel seemed energized by their progress, praising Alton's methodical approach. This is how you dismantle an empire, Samuel said admiringly. Not with noise and drama, but with facts and evidence. Pure Reed discipline. Near midnight, most of the team had gone home. Alton stood in his office, gazing out at the city lights spread below. The same view Grant Wexler probably had from his downtown tower, but tonight it felt different. Tonight, those lights represented not power to be hoarded, but truth finally emerging. Naomi knocked softly and entered. Just got word from Victor's contact at the Justice Department. Federal investigators want a preliminary briefing first thing tomorrow morning. The morning sun had barely touched the Atlanta skyline when Alton's phone erupted with urgent calls. He was already en route to headquarters, preparing mentally for the federal briefing, when Naomi's voice cut through his thoughts. The accountant is dead, she said, her words sharp with disbelief. Car accident late last night. Single vehicle, off Highway 400. Alton's grip tightened on his phone. Timing's not coincidental. Police are calling it a mechanical failure. No witnesses. When Alton reached the office, he found Victor pacing in the secured conference room, his usual composure fractured. The files are gone, Victor reported. Everything the accountant sent us, wiped from our secured servers overnight. That's impossible, Alton said. Those servers have triple redundancy. Someone used high-level internal credentials. They knew exactly where to look and how to access the system. Naomi burst in, tablet in hand. It's worse. Look at this. Every major business outlet was running variations of the same story. Reed Meridian CEO accused of manufacturing racial controversy to manipulate development deal. The articles quoted anonymous sources claiming Alton had orchestrated the entire gala incident as pretext to force Grant Wexler out of the waterfront project. "They're painting you as an opportunist," Naomi said, scrolling through headlines, "saying you used historical grievances to mask a hostile takeover attempt." Victor's phone buzzed. His face darkened as he read the message. "3 major banks just called our credit facilities into review. They're citing governance concerns." The morning deteriorated from there. By 10 o'clock, Alton learned that someone had filed a formal ethics complaint against Denise, alleging she had improperly influenced cases during her time on the bench. The accusations were clearly fabricated, but the mere existence of an investigation threatened her reputation and credibility as a witness. "They're trying to discredit everyone connected to the land claims," Denise said when she called, her voice tight with controlled anger. "Old colleagues are already distancing themselves. No one wants to be caught in the blast radius." Samuel Raines appeared in Alton's doorway around noon, his manner concerned but measured. "The board is getting nervous," he reported. "Several members are suggesting we pause the investigation, at least temporarily." "Pause?" Alton fixed him with a steady look. "While evidence disappears and witnesses die." "I understand your position," Samuel said smoothly. "But we have to consider the company's stability. These attacks are affecting stock price, credit access, client confidence. Maybe we could negotiate some kind of settlement on the land claims, preserve core operations. You want me to let them bury the truth again?" "I want you to protect what you've built," Samuel replied. "Sometimes tactical retreat is the wisest move." But something in Samuel's carefully reasonable tone raised old instincts in Alton. The timing was too perfect, the pressure too coordinated. He caught Naomi's eye and gave a subtle nod. While Samuel continued advocating restraint, Naomi and Victor launched a quiet investigation into the internal security breach. They traced access logs, cross-referenced timestamps, analyzed traffic patterns. By late afternoon, they had their answer. "It was Samuel," Naomi reported, laying out the digital evidence. "He's been feeding information to Grant Wexler for months. Strategy documents, meeting notes, witness lists, everything." Victor pulled up emails recovered from a hidden server. They promised him a senior position in the merged waterfront development, plus equity stakes in 3 Wexler subsidiaries. He's been their inside man since before the gala. The betrayal hit Alton at multiple levels. Samuel had been one of his first major hires, someone he'd personally mentored and promoted. They'd worked side by side through countless challenges. That long-term trust had made Samuel's access nearly unlimited, and his betrayal devastating. Security removed Samuel from the building within the hour, but the damage was done. By evening, 2 board members were openly discussing temporary leadership changes to stabilize stakeholder confidence. Major clients were delaying contract renewals. The carefully constructed case against the Wexlers was in shambles. Alton stood at his office window as darkness fell, watching city lights flicker to life. The same view that had felt like victory 24 hours ago now seemed to mock him. Decades of buried crimes were slipping back into shadow. The Wexlers' power structure was reasserting itself, crushing truth with the same ruthless efficiency they'd always used. Naomi entered quietly, carrying a stack of urgent messages. "The board wants an emergency session tomorrow morning. Victor's trying to delay it, but they smell blood," Alton finished. "They think backing away from this fight will save them." "We're not completely alone," she insisted. "Ruth and the other witnesses still stand with us. Denise won't back down. The truth is still the truth. Truth without proof, Alton said softly, just like my father faced. The weight of generations of strategic injustice pressed down on him. How many times had this pattern repeated? How many people had been silenced, discredited, isolated until they broke or gave up? Moonlight filtered through the study windows as Alton slumped in his father's old leather chair. Papers and folders lay scattered across every surface, remnants of a case that had haunted 2 generations. Denise sat across from him, her judicial composure intact despite the ethics attack against her. In the adjacent sitting room, Naomi worked her tablet while Victor paced, phone pressed to his ear. They're methodical, Alton said, rubbing his temples. Hit the evidence first, then credibility, then financing. Classic suffocation strategy. Because it usually works, Denise replied. People get isolated, then desperate. They start making mistakes. Like Father did. No, Denise's voice sharpened. Daddy didn't make mistakes. He just ran out of time and resources. But you have what he never did, institutional power and deep pockets. She pulled a thick manila folder from one of the boxes, its edges soft with age. Stop playing Grant's game. Come back to basics. What did Daddy always say about fighting giants? Don't throw 1 punch, throw 50, Alton quoted. The childhood memory brought a slight smile. He said, if you only have 1 shot, they'll see it coming. Exactly. Denise opened the folder, revealing yellowed papers covered in their father's precise handwriting. Look at how he built this case. Property records, tax assessments, witness statements, political donations, shell company registrations, code violation patterns. He didn't trust any single piece to hold up alone. Alton leaned forward, studying the methodical documentation. He was creating backup routes. If 1 path got blocked, 3 others would still be open, Denise finished. The problem wasn't his strategy. It was that he could only push 1 angle at a time. But you can activate everything at once. Naomi looked up from her tablet. We're not completely dark on evidence. I've been pulling archived screenshots, recovered email fragments, backup server logs. It's not pristine, but it's real. And Ruth called back, Victor added, ending his call. She says the elders are willing to testify publicly. They're tired of being afraid. Alton felt energy returning as he saw the larger pattern. Samuel leaked our playbook because we were moving piece by piece. But if we trigger everything simultaneously, they can't plug all the holes at once, Denise said. Courts, media, regulators, shareholders, political allies, hit them everywhere on the same day. The synchronized strike approach, Victor nodded. I can have civil filings ready within 48 hours. Multiple jurisdictions, multiple causes of action. Make them fight on every front. Naomi was already typing rapidly. I'll coordinate with the witnesses, prepare press packets, schedule coordinated releases. Once it starts, the story won't depend on any single source. Alton stood and began pacing, mind racing with possibilities. We'll need the timing perfect. Victor, draft the filings but hold them. Naomi, get the witness statements recorded and notarized immediately before anyone else disappears. We release everything within the same hour. What about the board meeting tomorrow? Victor asked. Let them meet, Alton said. I'll give them just enough reassurance to delay any drastic action. By the time they realize what's coming, it'll be too late to stop. Denise watched her brother with quiet approval. This is what Daddy wanted. Someone with the power to finish what he started. Not just expose the truth, but make it stick. They worked through the night, reconstructing evidence and building their synchronized offensive. Victor drafted complaints targeting every entity in the Wexler Empire. Naomi recovered crucial digital fragments and organized them into airtight chronologies. Denise called elderly witnesses one by one, her judicial reputation still carrying enough weight to secure their trust. Around 4 a.m., Ruth arrived with 2 boxes of original documents she'd kept hidden for decades. "Been waiting for the right time," she said simply. "Figure this is it." The sun was just beginning to lighten the eastern sky when Alton gathered his team. They were exhausted but focused, running on coffee and determination. "The Wexlers think they've won," he said. "They believe their power structure is intact, the same structure that's protected them for generations. But we're not trying to break through their defenses anymore. We're going to detonate the entire foundation at once." "Multiple civil suits," Victor affirmed. "State and federal. Coordinated witness statements," Naomi added. "On record, on camera. Full evidence packages to 3 major outlets," Victor continued. "Plus federal investigators and the state attorney general. And the community stands ready," Denise said. "Not as victims this time, as accusers." Alton looked at each of them in turn. His sister's unwavering strength, Naomi's fierce competence, Victor's precise determination. They had lost much in the past 24 hours, but they had found something more valuable. The key to victory hidden in his father's patient strategy. "They think they've isolated us," he said quietly. "But they've actually given us exactly what we need. The justification to unleash everything at once. No more measured steps. No more single points of failure. When we move, we bring down the entire corrupt edifice in one synchronized strike." Dawn's first rays streaked through the windows, painting the scattered papers in shades of gold. The light felt like a promise, not just of a new day, but of long-delayed justice finally within reach. Morning light streamed through Reed Meridian's glass-walled war room as Alton's team pushed through their exhaustion. Coffee cups littered the conference table, surrounded by stacks of documents and laptops displaying various pieces of their multi-pronged offensive. "Got another set of parcel maps," Naomi announced, her eyes red-rimmed but focused on her screen. "These are from my field photos last week. Look at the property line patterns. They match perfectly with the 1970s records." Victor leaned over her shoulder, legal pad in hand. The shell company transfers follow the exact same boundaries. Samuel might have corrupted some digital files, but he couldn't erase the physical landscape. Denise sat nearby, phone pressed to her ear as she spoke softly to another witness. She ended the call and looked up. "Ruth just confirmed. She'll bring 2 more families forward, the Johnsons and the Petersons. Their grandchildren still have the original deeds." "What about Loretta?" Alton asked, studying a financial projection. "She's scared but committed," Denise replied. "Says she's tired of carrying secrets. She'll testify about Evelyn's pattern of using staff to execute her social corrections, as she called them." Naomi's tablet chimed. "Financial records coming in from our backup servers in Texas. Samuel didn't know about those mirrors. We've got transaction histories linking 3 of the shell companies directly to Harlan Voss's personal accounts. Build redundancy into everything," Victor said, making notes. "Every claim needs at least 3 independent support paths. If they kill one source, 2 more stand ready." A junior analyst rushed in with a fresh stack of printouts. "Sir, we've reconstructed most of the zoning change timeline. The political donations align perfectly with each board vote." Alton nodded. "Good. Victor, weave that into the regulatory filing. Show them it wasn't just land theft, it was systematic corruption." Denise sorted through archived newspaper clippings. The displacement pattern is clear once you map it. They targeted stable black-owned properties first, used code violations to force sales, then flipped the parcels through shells to hide the real buyers. "Speaking of buyers," Naomi interjected, "Marcus Torres from the State Pension Fund is downstairs. Says he can meet now if you're ready." Alton straightened his tie. "Perfect timing. Victor, polish that community trust framework while I'm gone." I want a complete alternative vision to present. In a private conference room, Alton laid out his proposal to Marcus Torres. The pension fund representative studied the numbers carefully. So, instead of luxury condos, you're proposing mixed-income housing with priority placement for displaced families? Torres asked. Plus, retail spaces reserved for local businesses, community facilities, and a trust structure that keeps ownership partially local, Alton confirmed. The returns are solid, but the social impact is transformative. And the Wexlers won't be involved. This isn't just about exposing their past crimes, it's about building something better for the future. Torres nodded slowly. Send me the full proposal. If the numbers hold up, we can move quickly. Back in the war room, energy surged as news arrived from multiple fronts. Victor had reconstructed the legal narrative using old tax records and witness statements. Denise confirmed 4 more families willing to testify about the original displacement. Naomi's team recovered crucial email threads from deep server backups. Mr. Reed, a young IT specialist called out. We found something about the gala. The kitchen had contracted security cameras through an outside vendor. Their system backs up independently. Alton turned sharply. Can we access it? Already working on it, Naomi said. The vendor's cooperative. They don't want any liability exposure. Should have the footage within the hour. Focus on the service corridor and prep areas, Alton instructed. That's where Evelyn would have given her orders. The team worked with renewed intensity. Victor assembled civil complaints targeting every entity in the Wexler empire. Denise prepared witness packets with Ruth and other community elders. The pension fund proposal took shape, offering a concrete path to restoration. Shortly before noon, Naomi's phone lit up. Videos here. She connected her laptop to the main screen. The footage was crisp, showing the kitchen's controlled chaos during the gala. They watched staff moving efficiently until Evelyn Wexler entered, her elegant gown incongruous among the stainless steel counters. The audio was clear. Evelyn's voice carried its usual polish, but now they heard the venom beneath. That plate there, yes, the spoiled one. Have it specially plated and brought to Dr. Reed's place. Her smile was precise as a scalpel. Let's remind him what happens when people forget their proper place in this city. The room fell silent as the video continued, showing the deliberate preparation and delivery of the tainted food. There was no possibility of accident or misunderstanding. Every moment had been calculated for maximum humiliation. Naomi stopped the playback, her expression hard. The timestamp matches perfectly. We have her, clear as day, ordering a racist attack on camera. The autumn sun slanted through Atlanta's City Hall windows as preparations for Grant Wexler's press conference reached their final stages. Television crews adjusted their equipment while reporters claimed prime spots near the podium. The official story was simple. The mayor and the city's most prominent developer would present a path forward for the troubled waterfront project. In his downtown office, Victor Hale stood before a bank of monitors, reviewing final legal documents with his team. File everything simultaneously, he instructed, checking his watch. The civil complaints, the evidence supplements, and the sealed federal referrals. I want them all registered before Grant takes that podium. Timeline's tight, his associate warned. That's the point, Victor replied, straightening his tie. They won't have time to react. Across town, Naomi Price sat in a private conference room at the Atlanta Journal-Constitution, meeting with 3 senior reporters. Stacks of authenticated documents covered the table between them. Everything here is verified, she explained, sliding USB drives across the table. Financial records, property transfers, witness statements, and the complete gala kitchen footage. You'll find Grant's signature on Shell Company documents, Evelyn's voice on camera ordering the contaminated food, and Bennett's racist comments from last week. The veteran reporter studied her carefully. Why embargo until the press conference? Because that's when they'll be trapped in their own lies, Naomi answered. All we ask is 30 minutes to let them speak first. At a small church near the old waterfront, Denise Reed gathered with Ruth Bell, Loretta Vale, and other community elders. The elderly witnesses sat straight-backed in their Sunday best, dignity radiating from every pressed collar and carefully pinned brooch. You don't have to do this, Denise reminded them gently. Ruth adjusted her pearl necklace. Child, we've waited 40 years to tell this truth. A few more hours won't break us. Loretta nodded firmly. Let Evelyn try explaining herself with me standing right there. In the gleaming offices of the State Pension Fund, Alton Reed reviewed final terms with Marcus Torres and the Community Trust representatives. The alternative development proposal lay before them, every page initialed. The funding is secured, Torres confirmed. The moment you give the signal, we'll announce full backing for the community-centered plan. And the trust structure? Alton asked. The community representative smiled. Legally bulletproof. The displaced families will have guaranteed rights and representation in every decision. Meanwhile, at the Wexler mansion, Grant adjusted his tie in a marble-lined dressing room. The statement's simple, he told his reflection. We're moving forward with stronger partners. Reed Meridian's withdrawal was unfortunate, but ultimately irrelevant. Don't even say his name, Evelyn advised, applying another layer of perfectly neutral lipstick. Let the mayor handle any questions about that incident. You focus on strength and vision. Bennett sprawled on a leather chair, scrolling through his phone. The board's probably forcing him out by now anyway. Did you see their stock this morning? Remember, Evelyn added, I'll handle the social angle if it comes up. Just one tear, one mention of healing our divided city. She practiced her wounded expression in the mirror. In the mayor's office, Celia Voss rehearsed her talking points with her chief of staff. We appreciate all parties' perspectives, she repeated. The city remains committed to responsible development that serves everyone. What if Reed shows up? Her aide asked. He won't, she said firmly. Not after yesterday's setbacks. And if he does, we'll acknowledge his concerns while emphasizing the need to move forward. The press conference room filled steadily. Television cameras lined the back wall while photographers claimed positions near the stage. Grant's team distributed glossy folders containing architectural renderings and economic projections. Evelyn worked the room gracefully, touching shoulders and whispering warm greetings to key allies. Bennett positioned himself near the press section, making sure reporters noticed his imposing presence. Mayor Voss's staff arranged the podium and tested the microphone, their practiced efficiency masking their nervousness. At precisely 2 o'clock, the mayor's press secretary approached the podium. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for coming. Mayor Voss and Mr. Wexler will make brief statements about the waterfront development, followed by questions. Grant stood ready in the wings, index cards in hand. Evelyn touched up her makeup one final time. Bennett smirked at a young reporter who dared meet his eye. The mayor smoothed her jacket and prepared to step forward. That's when the side door opened. Alton Reed entered first, his calm presence drawing every eye in the room. Behind him came Denise, her judicial bearing unmistakable, and Victor Hale, carrying a slim leather briefcase. Naomi Price followed, flanked by the senior reporters she'd met with earlier. Then came Ruth Bell, walking slowly but proudly, her head high. Loretta Vale entered next, her former servants practiced invisibility replaced by quiet strength. Other community elders followed, each carrying dignity like armor. The room's atmosphere transformed instantly. Cameras swung away from the podium. Reporters reached for fresh notebooks. Grant's practiced smile froze. Evelyn's fingers tightened on her purse. Bennett's smirk vanished. Mayor Voss stopped mid-stride, suddenly uncertain whether she should continue to the podium or retreat to safer ground. Alton moved to the center of the room, his team and witnesses arranging themselves behind him with choreographed precision. He carried no notes, no folders, no props, just the weight of truth and 40 years of waiting. The silence in the press room shattered as Grant Wexler strode toward the podium, attempting to seize control. "This is a private briefing about project advancement," he announced sharply. "Security, please remove any uninvited." "Actually," Victor Hale interrupted, opening his briefcase, "as of 11 minutes ago, we filed civil actions naming Wexler Development, its subsidiaries, and several current officers in a systematic land theft and fraud scheme spanning 4 decades. He held up documentation bearing fresh court stamps. Federal authorities have also received comprehensive evidence packages regarding suspicious property transfers, tax irregularities, and potential criminal conspiracy. Reporters surged forward, cameras flashing. Grant's face reddened. "This is a desperate publicity stunt by a failing—" "Play the footage," Naomi Price called out clearly. The room's main screen flickered to life, showing high-resolution security camera footage from the gala kitchen. Evelyn Wexler's voice rang crystal clear. "Make sure Dr. Reed's plate is the special one I marked. Let's see if he remembers where he comes from." The timestamp showed this occurred moments after she had reviewed the seating chart. Evelyn stepped forward, her practiced smile cracking slightly. "That recording is clearly doctored." "I would never—" "I was there," Loretta Vale stated, her voice steady. "I watched Mrs. Wexler's face change when she saw the Reed name. She went straight to the kitchen and insisted on handling that plate herself." She looked directly at Evelyn. "You wanted witnesses to see you serve it personally. You wanted the humiliation public." Ruth Bell moved to stand beside Loretta, her aged frame straight with dignity. "Just like your daddy wanted it public when he took our homes," she said. "I brought the original deed to my grandmother's house, the one that somehow got lost at the county office right before Harlan Voss's shell company filed tax liens against half the neighborhood." More elderly residents stepped forward, each carrying preserved documents. Victor began laying out enlarged maps showing property transfers, shell company structures, and financial flows, all leading back to early Wexler interests. "My father documented everything," Denise Reed declared, placing a thick folder on the podium. "Every meeting, every threat, every family forced out. He knew someday the truth would matter more than power." Bennett surged forward aggressively. "This is race-baiting garbage. You people always—" His voice cut off as his own words filled the room from Naomi's tablet. "These entitled slur think they can push around real Atlanta families? Dad should have taught Reed his place years ago like Granddad did with the rest of them." Mayor Voss tried to reach the microphone. "Perhaps we should postpone this discussion." "No more postponing," Alton said quietly, but his voice carried to every corner. "No more burying. No more pretending." He held up a weathered leather folder. "These came from your father's private study, Evelyn. The ones you tried to hide when you recognized my name." The color drained from Evelyn's face. 40 years ago," Alton continued, "my father and his business partner James Mitchell tried to expose the displacement scheme. They had proof linking Harlan Voss to fraudulent property seizures targeting black families. But before they could file their case, Mitchell died in a suspicious fire at one of the condemned buildings your father's company was using to force people out." Gasps filled the room. Reporters scribbled frantically. "That's why you panicked at the gala," Alton said, still focused on Evelyn. "You saw the Reed name and remembered your father's warnings. The family that almost exposed everything. The story that never quite died." "You're making wild accusations," Grant started. "Your own signature is on the shell company transfers," Victor cut in. "The same patterns your father-in-law used, documented in his own records. Did you think no one would ever connect it all? Naomi stepped forward with more files. We have sworn statements from former employees, banking records, political donation patterns timed to zoning changes, and proof of ongoing witness intimidation. The room had turned openly hostile to the Wexlers. Cameras tracked their every expression. Reporters who had been deferential minutes earlier now shouted accusatory questions. Grant's businessman facade cracked. This is a coordinated attack on... This is justice, Ruth Bell declared. 40 years late, but right on time. Through the press room's glass doors, dark-suited federal agents appeared, moving purposefully toward Grant. Evelyn's social mask crumbled completely as she watched them approach. Her perfectly composed features twisted with naked panic, the same expression she had mocked on countless faces of families she helped destroy. Bennett backed away from the advancing investigators, nearly tripping over camera cables. Mayor Voss retreated from the podium entirely, her staff already drafting her resignation statement. The agents reached Grant just as Alton placed his father's original case files on the podium. 40 years of buried truth laid bare, with every camera rolling. The evening light faded over Atlanta as television screens across the city replayed the collapse of the Wexler empire. Breaking news banners flashed constantly. Wexler Holdings suspended from trading. Mayor Voss announces resignation. Federal probe expands. Inside Reed Meridian's command center, Naomi monitored the cascade of consequences unfolding in real time. Third major donor foundation just cut ties with Evelyn's charity board, she reported. The Museum of Fine Arts removed the Wexler name from their wing. The Symphony Guild is reviewing leadership structure. Victor hung up his phone with a grim satisfaction. Grant's being held for questioning. His own board called an emergency session to freeze his authority. They're terrified of liability exposure. Bennett? Alton asked, standing at the window. Already done, Naomi said. Wexler Development's succession committee voted unanimously to remove him from all positions. His leaked comments made him toxic. The family's biggest investors demanded it. Denise entered with a tablet, displaying local news coverage. The afternoon's revelations dominated every channel. They're running Father's old photos, she said quietly. The protest footage, his meetings with displaced families. They're finally telling the real story. Alton watched the scenes play across the screen. Their father standing proud despite threats, working to preserve evidence even when courts wouldn't hear it. He knew this day would come, Alton said. He made sure the truth would survive. The truth, and something more, Victor added, spreading architectural renderings across the conference table. The replacement waterfront plan is ready for announcement. Full community trust structure, pension fund backing, and guaranteed benefits for displaced families and descendants. Naomi pulled up the details on the main screen. Priority development rights, subsidized housing access, business incubation funding, and a permanent memorial plaza documenting the original neighborhood and the fight to reclaim it. Ruth Bell called, Denise said. She's gathering the elders at the site. They want to be there when we announce the restoration terms. Alton nodded. Then let's do this right. In the open. Where everyone can see justice happening. The sun was sinking toward the horizon as their convoy reached the waterfront. News crews had already assembled, their cameras capturing the stark contrast between Wexler's stalled luxury development and the community gathering to reclaim it. Ruth Bell stood with other elderly residents near a temporary podium, their faces dignified and determined. These were the survivors, the ones who had held on to deeds and memories when the system tried to erase both. Loretta Vale joined them, no longer afraid to be seen. Other former Wexler employees stepped forward too, ready to add their testimony to the permanent record. Victor arranged the legal documents while Naomi coordinated with press teams. Denise helped the elders to reserved seats, treating each with the formal respect the courts had once denied them. Alton took the podium as golden evening light washed across the water. Cameras rolled as he outlined the new plan, but he spoke directly to Ruth and the other elders. This land was stolen through fraud, corruption, and violence, he declared. Today, we begin making it right, not with empty words, with deeds, funds, and legal guarantees that can never be reversed. He detailed the restoration terms, direct restitution payments, guaranteed affordable housing units, minority contractor requirements, small business support, and education funding drawn from recovered Wexler assets. The Memorial Plaza will stand at the heart of the project, he continued. Every name, every address, every family's story preserved in stone, including James Mitchell, my father's partner, who died trying to expose the truth, and including my father, who made sure that truth would survive to see this day. Ruth Bell rose slowly, supported by Denise. We kept our deeds, she said, her voice carrying across the crowd. We kept our dignity. We kept our memories when they tried to bury them with bulldozers. Now we get to see justice. Alton lifted a ceremonial shovel draped with a ribbon. The gathered cameras surged forward, expecting him to break ground himself. Instead, he stepped away from the podium and walked to Ruth. This land remembers its true owners, he said, placing the shovel in her weathered hands. The first turn of earth should come from those who never stopped fighting for it. Ruth's fingers closed around the handle as reporters called questions and cameras flashed. But she didn't pose or perform for them. She simply pressed the blade into the soil that had once belonged to her grandmother, lifted it, and let the earth fall in the fading sunlight. The gesture was small, but its meaning echoed across 40 years of struggle. This wasn't just a real estate announcement or a legal settlement. It was the visible beginning of justice, witnessed by the city that had tried to look away for so long. Other elders stepped forward to take their turns with the shovel. Each one reclaimed a piece of what had been stolen. Each one helped break ground for a future built on truth instead of power. Denise stood at Alton's shoulder, tears in her eyes, but her head high. Father would be proud, she whispered. Not just of winning right. The cameras kept rolling as the sun set over the water. They captured every moment as stolen ground began returning to its people, one shovelful at a time, in full public view. If you enjoyed the story, leave a like to support my channel, and subscribe so that you do not miss out on the next one. On the screen, I have picked 2 special stories just for you. Have a wonderful day.